welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. Big action on the Wall Street sales tax in the works. The marching order for the week is mobilize for the Wall Street sales tax. This is the idea whose time has come. There is now worldwide momentum for the Wall Street sales tax, and it has a possibility of fitting in to the Washington debate here over the next couple of months in ways that may prove surprising. Democrats will be looking for ways to raise revenue without increasing taxes on working people. This is really the only way, and it's relatively simple and straightforward, as we would say, and therefore deserves all of your attention. Forget about collateral issues on the domestic front. Put it all on the Wall Street sales tax. Bet all your chips on the Wall Street sales tax. That is the one point in the Death Star where the Death Star is vulnerable, and there indeed it is very vulnerable. Now the news is above all from Europe. We have 11 countries of the European Union demanding and announcing that they will implement a financial transaction tax. I call this one the Euro-Tobin, but it is essentially the Wall Street sales tax under those conditions. We can call it the City of London, Frankfurt, and maybe Paris tax, but you get the idea. The Euro-Tobin is the tax on financial transactions at the level of these European states. Now, these are the main countries of Europe, the biggest, the most influential, the principal ones. Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Belgium, Austria, Portugal, Greece, Slovenia, Slovakia, and Estonia. 11 European countries this Tuesday demanded the financial transaction tax. Now, it is too small. The percentage is obviously not adequate. The use of the money is perhaps not everything that it should be. It's not even clear exactly, I think, at this point, what the money goes for. The money has to go into the national treasuries. Needless to say, we love the penguins and the polar bears, but you cannot run European policy for the penguins and the polar bears. You've got to think about the human beings. Naturally, the British are foaming at the mouth. The British regard this as casus belli. And when we have the oligarchs of the world, the parasites and kleptocrats of the planet gathering in Davos on the Magic Mountain, right? Thomas Mann's favorite story, the sanitarium there at the top where you go and then you begin to be infected by sickness, as Hans Kastorp found before World War I. Anyway, they're on the Magic Mountain, and Cameron is foaming at the mouth. Cameron threatens to leave Europe. Now, you may ask yourself, why would Perfide Albion ever threaten to leave Europe when the entire method of Perfide Albion is to suck the blood of European economic activity, above all German, but also French, Italian, and so forth? Those are countries with industries. They have some kind of small and medium industry left. They have some agriculture left. They have economic activity. The British basically have the City of London, and more or less that's it. Without the ability to parasitize continental Europe, the City of London would revert to the backwater that it was between about 1955 and 1958, before Guido Carli invented the euro-dollar market to save the British at that point. So the British play on both tables. And, of course, de Gaulle was right. Britain is a Trojan horse inside the European community. Under normal circumstances, that is 10 or 15 years ago, my policy would have been kick the British out of the European Union. They don't want to be there. The oligarchs don't want to be there. And they're simply wreckers and parasites. Now, of course, things are much more sensitive and fragile. We don't want Greece to leave the European Union. We don't even want the British to leave. We want to keep the British in, but we want to destroy the London oligarchy in place, in the sense that we need to get rid of the oligarchy as expressed by the Republican Party. And these are actually closely linked. If we can carry out the scenario here in the United States of the demolition of the Republican Party and having that Republican Party revert to a racist regional party of the Deep South, the Intermountain West, and certain rural areas, and if we can then proceed to split the Democratic Party down the middle between the Wall Street Democrats of Obama, Durbin, Schumer, and Hillary Clinton, and on the other hand, the populists of Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, Kaptur, DeFazio, and others, this would begin the demolition of the current form of oligarchy on a world scale. So the stakes here in the United States are very large. So the British Conservative Party, of course, with their lunatic backbenchers. We should also remember the UK Independence Party, those reactionaries, those troglodytes that we see so often on Russia Today. For some reason, they've got the inside track on Russia Today. They've been clamoring to get out of Europe. They do not understand, obviously, the way the City of London works and how that parasitism requires membership. So the confrontation in Europe is clear. On the one side, Germany, France, Belgium, Estonia, Greece, Spain, Italy, Austria, Portugal, Slovenia, Slovakia. That's your anti-derivatives bloc. It's actually the anti-City of London bloc. On the other hand, the British and their puppets are generally left over from EFTA, right, the European Free Trade Association. The inner six have grown, the outer seven have atrophied, but the British will try to get some of the outer seven. Some of them are already on this, the pro-derivatives, the anti-derivatives list, but some of the others, Sweden, for example, maybe Ireland, some of these other places, maybe Poland, which was not a factor in those days, maybe they could be mobilized for the pro-derivatives bloc, but that is not certain, because everybody knows that the German, French, Italian combination then begins to dominate continental Europe. This is actually a step towards the continental bloc, the nightmare of the British since the Boer War, the continental bloc, against them and against their City of London and against the looting and parasitism of the City of London. So that's a big step forward. Now, this is not yet implemented. It's moving on. It is a financial transaction tax, and we will follow it closely. Now, this was reflected into the United States on the Ed Schultz show on Wednesday evening. I'm sure you can find a tape of this on the Internet. And Ed Schultz has reported in the past about Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, wanting to submit a Wall Street sales tax to the Senate. This time he had David K. Johnson. I don't know if David K. Johnson has been really a valiant fighter for the Wall Street sales tax, but I hope he will be one. This is the transaction tax. They say it would be 0.1% of trading in stocks and bonds and 0.01 of derivatives, but it still brings in heavy-duty money. And this is similar to Harkin-DeFazio, the Harkin-DeFazio bill. That is too little and too late. We want a 1% Wall Street sales tax. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. You must keep up with Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed, minute to minute, hour to hour, especially during big events. Let's remember these social media, especially Twitter, used by activists all over the world to coordinate their activities when you're out there and you're demonstrating, let's say. And I hope people will learn to do this. We had some encouraging beginnings this past weekend. Follow the History Channel and the National Geographic Channel in the next 2 to 3 months. I've taped various kinds of material for them, and do take a look. Watch those listings. I'll let you know in the near future. But in the meantime, we got the Wall Street sales tax. It's coming from Germany, France, Belgium, Estonia, Greece, Spain, Italy, Austria, Portugal, Slovenia, Slovakia. The British are freaking. They've dragged the Swedes with them. They'll drag some others. Don't let them stop it. This is now the main issue. Time to break with the British on the Wall Street sales tax. Let Cameron freak. He's really damaging his own financial community more than anybody else. As one of the French said, if you leave the European community, we'll roll out the red carpet and we'll get all the businesses that are in London because they can parasitize Europe from there. But if you leave, you will leave. And you got to decide, you're going to be in or out. Not in with special privileges to loot all the rest, right? And above all, the City of London is going to have to pay the financial transaction tax because you can make it extraterritorial. You can say any transaction involving anybody in continental Europe will have to pay that, even if the trade goes through London. So Ed Schultz continues to cover it. At the meeting of the Progressive Democrats of America last Saturday, we had some representatives of the United Front Against Austerity. And here we had Congressman Keith Ellison, Progressive Caucus. This is the Muslim member of Congress. He is in favor of a transaction tax. He's for it. It was actually one of his leading items that he recited in a short film that he made. He's also in favor of letting Medicare Part D haggle with Big Pharma in the same way that the Veterans Administration can to save billions upon billions of dollars. Don't pay list price. Use your buying power. But mainly, the interesting thing from Ellison is in effect, the Wall Street sales tax. Unfortunately, when he appeared on Ed Schultz later in the week, and this was the night of Obama's inauguration, I guess all programmatic content went out the window because he forgot to say anything about the Wall Street sales tax or indeed haggling on Medicare Part D. Now, there's also this pesky problem, the Robin Hood tax. This is the dumbest name one could imagine. This is a name designed to fail. It reminds me of single payer. What the hell is it? Nobody knows. Medicare for all, clear. Call it Medicare for all. In this case, the Robin Hood tax, I can hear Limbaugh and Hannity saying, they claim they're going to rob from the rich and give to the poor, and they're going to say you're rich. And you can see how it goes. This may suit the British ideology, although I doubt it, but the American one, it does not suit. It does not suit. On the other hand, we have a little interesting handout from the RobinHoodTax.org, and we're told we have a simple idea that can help. Add a sales tax on Wall Street trades of stocks, bonds, derivatives, and other financial transactions. It's like the sales tax you pay when buying a pair of shoes. Does that rhetoric ring a bell? Isn't that something like what you've been hearing here? I'm pleased if they want to use some of my formulations, but get rid of this Robin Hood tax. They say we call it the Robin Hood tax. Call it something else. Call it the Wall Street sales tax, because that's what it is. And once it's the Wall Street sales tax, everybody wants it. And, of course, the United Front Against Austerity, always in the vanguard, was able to get this on CNN this past Sunday afternoon, the day before the public inauguration, the open-air inauguration. We had a small group from the United Front Against Austerity going down to the mall, finding the CNN broadcast booth with a small crowd in front of them, very few signs, and going down there with a sign that says 1% Wall Street sales tax. Now, you can see some of these pictures are just astounding. You have the whole sign on the CNN screen from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to about 5:30. It was the Wall Street sales tax all the way. This would have gone on longer, but unfortunately it got to be very windy, and a gust of wind came along and broke both of the dowel sticks, the poles that were being used to hold up the sides of this sign. At one point, a CNN representative came out and saying they're going crazy back there. Essentially, the suits are freaking out. Can't you please get this out of our shot? It's so light in color that it's screwing up our color dynamics. No, sorry. This is public space. This is the National Mall. It belongs to the American people. You can't buy it. You can't even rent it, CNN. And, of course, if CNN were a news organization, if instead of suppressing news, they actually reported news, they had, for a while up there, they had Cyndi Lauper is about to attend the inauguration. Boy, there's an earth-shaking development. That's something you've got to know about, right? Cyndi Lauper, back from the cerements of her forgotten, I don't know what, but there she is, still alive, amazingly enough, but telling us all about herself primarily and whatever. But even in that one, you could still see programmatic content, the 1% Wall Street sales tax. Take a look at that on Tarpley.net. There are 5 or 6 great photographs of this wonderful sign. So you get the idea. It is growing. The Progressive Caucus has it. You've got to get this into the hands of your congressperson. You've got to push ahead in agitation for this. If you're anywhere near Davos, that's the place to go with some material about the Wall Street sales tax. Any parliament, if you're in a European country that's not going for it, make sure they do go for it. Make sure the public knows what it is. Now, let's also take a look at Obama's first inaugural. Well, let's establish a benchmark. We're told that this is a new progressive liberal manifesto. I think this word liberal, I dislike it intensely, but if you want to see what a second inaugural looks like from somebody who's trying to defend the cause of human civilization, and that is the issue, and trying to fight for working people, that's important too. Not neoliberal and not going for various trendy formulations, but the bedrock of civilization. Let's go back to Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1937, and here's what a real second-term presidential agenda would sound like. And we'll get to that in the next segment. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. So, the critique of Obama's second inaugural. I had a critique of Obama's first inaugural on the same day at a meeting organized by Sandra Hicks in Arlington, Virginia. Roosevelt said in 1933, the money changers have left their high seats in the temple because of their own incompetence. They brought down the economy. With Obama, it was, yes, there's been malfeasance by a few, but we have failed to make the hard decisions. And you could see the neoliberal treachery shining through. And so it is this time. Let's go back to the second inaugural of a real president, January 20th, 1937. Here is the challenge to our democracy. In this nation, I see tens of millions of its citizens, a substantial part of its whole population, who at this very moment are denied the greater part of what the very lowest standards of today call the necessities of life. I see millions of families trying to live on incomes so meager that the pall of family disaster hangs over them day by day. I see millions whose daily lives in city and on farm continue under conditions labeled indecent by so-called polite society half a century ago, 1937. I see millions denied education, recreation, and the opportunity to better their lot and the lot of their children. I see millions lacking the means to buy the products of farm and factory, and by their poverty, denying work and productiveness to many other millions. I see 1/3 of a nation ill-housed, ill-clad, ill-nourished. Now, that's the defense of working people and the defense of civilization. I see 1/3 of a nation ill-housed, ill-clad, ill-nourished. Well, could we say that today? I see 50 million people on food stamps. I see 50 million people in extreme poverty. I see a job deficit in excess of 30 million new productive jobs. And what do we get from Obama? Nothing. Let's just go through the list. Concerning jobs, nothing. No job program. No systematic approach to it. The word job appears, I think, once or twice in the text. Once it's simply the truism that if you want to have jobs, you got to have infrastructure. But there's no systematic approach. There's no promise of any kind concerning job creation. He simply says, an economic recovery is in progress. Well, it's not good enough. This seems to mean that Obama thinks that he can get away with simply ignoring the Depression. No. How about youth unemployment? We have youth unemployment in the inner city among black, Hispanic. We have Appalachian, poor white youth unemployment. And now we've got middle-class, college-educated youth unemployment. How about a word for them, since they helped to put you into the White House? Nothing. So we got nothing about jobs, nothing about an economic recovery, except supposedly it's ongoing and there's nothing we need to do. Nothing about youth unemployment. How about a new war on poverty? Don't we have it? If we've got 50 million people on food stamps and others who would need to be on food stamps, how about the 99ers who have exhausted their unemployment benefits? Does Obama ever think of them? Or does he simply contemplate his narcissistic image in a mirror and tell himself that he really is the Messiah and the Savior? A Marshall Plan for the cities. That would include youth unemployment, transportation, all kinds of reindustrialization plans. Nothing. Now let's think of the black community. The unions did everything to put Obama into office. They get nothing. But let's look at the black community. The black community literally gets nothing because they're involved in the heaviest unemployment, right? Black youth unemployment, 50%, 60%. Let's look at the District of Columbia. Let's look at the one political division in the United States that gave Obama the biggest majority he got anywhere, the District of Columbia. How about D.C. statehood? D.C. statehood would mean 2 D.C. senators and 1 representative. Chances are they'd all be black. We'd have 2 black senators guaranteed. They would counterbalance the racist, reactionary Southern Tea Party and other assorted negative influences. Does Obama do a word for them? No. And indeed, he snubs them. The D.C. government, in front of one of the administration buildings on Lower Pennsylvania Avenue, set up their own reviewing stand, right? Much criticized, but they had a heated reviewing stand for the D.C. government and their guests, perfectly legitimate. And along come Obama and Biden, and they're walking outside of their limousines. But as soon as they get close to the District of Columbia pavilion, they get back in the limousine because they don't want to have to go over and glad hand Mayor Vincent Gray, somebody who has demonstrated against Obama and Obama's Satan sandwich and other austerity measures. So the black community of D.C., the poorer people in the District of Columbia, turned out for Obama like nobody's business. We were over by the World Bank with the United Front Against Austerity, big 1% Wall Street sales tax sign. Very, very positive reception. But these people, they think that Obama is going to defend them, and unfortunately, this is not the case. So, again, the unions, the black community and the unions, this is Obama's election victory, I think, in a nutshell. They needed something like card check. They needed to facilitate the process of trade union organization. They got nothing. The trade unions would have needed some condemnation of the fascist governors, of the Walker in Wisconsin, Snyder in Michigan, Kasich in Ohio, Mitch Daniels in Indiana, Scott in Florida, that bum in Maine. Try to put the national spotlight on these people. Nothing. There is, by contrast, and I was surprised, Obama did say it's not acceptable to have people waiting for hours online to vote. So implicitly he's saying we have racist governors who want to stop black and Hispanic populations and poor people and elderly people and youth from voting. That's fine. But we've also got fascist governors who are carrying out union busting and other fascist measures in their states. It is the responsibility of the president to guarantee a Republican form of government, small r, and to obey the 14th Amendment that no state can deprive you of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And that's what's going on in Michigan under the Little Hitler law, right? I guess we're now under son of Little Hitler. We'll get a report about this from the front in a little while. So the unions this past week have reached a low point. We'll try to report it later in the show. Obama could have said something to defend teachers from the onslaught. But, of course, he can't do that because he's leading the attack. Arnie Duncan, his Secretary of Education. How about something that has been widely discussed in the think tank circuit? Break up the big banks. Break up the Wall Street zombie institutions. End too big to fail. Or otherwise put, enforce existing law against the Wall Street zombie banks. Shut them down. Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation must intervene. Controller of the currency must intervene. Get in there, shut them down. Not a word. The space program, right? Obama's the new Roosevelt. He attacks Roosevelt's signature program of Social Security. He's the new LBJ, I guess, but he certainly attacks Medicare more than anything. And he's the new Kennedy with the space program, but he's destroying the space program. And we'll have a couple of other things that he could have been doing. So that is one big deception. That is a tissue of deception and dissembling and fakery, exactly the thing you'd expect from Obama. And don't be duped and don't be fooled. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, we just mentioned the fight in Michigan. This remains at the center of our interest. It also remains at the center of a media blackout by the controlled corporate media. So let's try to do our part and cut through that news embargo coming out of Michigan. Let's go to Benton Harbor, Michigan, and try to catch up with our friend Reverend Edward Pinkney, who is, of course, leading the fight against the emergency manager law, against the anti-union measures, and generally trying to defend working people in the real world here. And Reverend Pinkney, of course, is going to be in Los Angeles, California, at the end of this month of January, and the last couple of days of January and the first couple of days of February, because he's going to be protesting at the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, dinner and image awards, and he has some reforms that he wants to call to everybody's attention. So, Reverend Pinkney, welcome. We got about 10 minutes, so please take it away. Oh, no. Okay. Well, then, look, the other thing in the Obama address, Nixon, I'm not sure whether it was an inaugural, but even somebody like Nixon, right, as slimy as you can imagine, proposed a war on cancer. This is 40 years ago. And this has had effect. This has meant something. Cancer is not yet vanquished, but the death rate from cancer has been going down, down, down. So millions of lives have been saved. Millions of people have been given the precious gift of years or decades of productive life, right? The national economy benefits. How about something like Alzheimer's disease, right? We can pick what's the epidemic of the future. Well, thanks to the war on cancer and other things, people are living longer. They're living long enough to get Alzheimer's disease. We had an interesting program. Diana Rehm this week had a bunch of people on talking about Alzheimer's disease, and she had one guy from an organization called Us Against Alzheimer's, and this was a breath of fresh air because he said, look, politicians see this as a zero-sum game. Either you cut the benefit or you raise taxes. But he said, look, tell me, what are the costs of treating polio these days? Well, the costs of treating polio are just about zero. There is some residual stuff left over, I'm sure, somewhere. But basically, polio, zero. Why not find cures? Why not have medical innovation so that you can vanquish the dread diseases? Why not declare war on the diseases of the aging, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and related forms of dementia, in effect, right? So that would be a crash program, a Manhattan Project that could build on the work done against cancer, against cardiovascular, against AIDS, and related things. Now go on to some broader thing, right? It turns out we're spending $6 billion on cancer research, $3 billion on AIDS, $500,000 on Alzheimer's. We will soon have 15 million Alzheimer's cases and 10 million deaths. That's from now to the middle of the century. How about something like that? So I don't see any of it. Looks to me like there was nothing about jobs, nothing for unions, nothing about an economic recovery, except that supposedly it's happening. Nothing about youth unemployment, nothing about a war on poverty, nothing about a Marshall Plan. We need to help trade unions. We need to have D.C. statehood. We've got to do something to defend teachers, break up the big banks, revive the space program, and get biomedical research rolling. And we can use the federalized Fed to help pay for that. But now I'm told we do have Reverend Pinckney is with us. So, Reverend, I've already introduced you. So we'll have about 10 minutes between this segment and the next, if you can come back. And please tell us what you're up to in Los Angeles and in general.
Hey, well, we're doing a mass protest of the NAACP, the Image Awards in Los Angeles, California, February the 1st. We're going to make sure that we be there so we can let Ben Jealous know that we want him to resign from the NAACP. He makes almost $500,000, $500,000 as president of the NAACP. That's with his speaking engagements and everything else. It's come to a total of that. So what they're doing now, they're misrepresenting the NAACP. The NAACP is misrepresenting the black community. They're out of touch with the black community. And we want to stop them from exploiting members and our ancestors. See, the NAACP has been pimping our community for a long period of time. And when I say that, I mean exactly that. They come in, they get them corporate dollars, and they diss the community. They do nothing for the community. They're no longer a civil rights organization. And what we want to do, we want to make sure that they understand that it's important for you to, if you are a civil rights organization, to act like one. So we are putting pressure on them. And right now, the news media is really eating this situation up, and we're taking this thing to a whole different level. We want them to know that we are not going to go away, and we want to make sure that we stop the NAACP from selling out to the corporations in our community.
And Reverend, you also you'd like to have the Jealous resign, but then you want to change the way in which the leadership is selected, and I think you also want to have an audit. Am I right?
Absolutely. We want to make sure that the members are allowed to elect the president of the NAACP and not the board. And what that does is open up the members to be able to decide what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, or what you can do and what you can't do. Now what's happening now is so out of touch with the not only the members but the community. You never hear about the NAACP standing up for civil rights anymore. Just the other day in the New York Times, they had an article about the NAACP have sided with the Coca-Cola Company. Matter of fact, they actually filed a lawsuit to say it's okay for these soft drinks to be in the community, which is obesity is flourishing in the black community. So what they're doing now, they have stopped fighting for civil rights and stopped fighting for these corporations, and we want it to stop.
Reverend, when you say the board, I wonder what kind of people are on the board of the NAACP. Can you give us some names?
Oh, yeah, we can Gil Ford, Yvonne White, I think Julius Barnes, I believe it may be still on there. I can't think of all the names themselves that's on the board. There's 64 of them, and they're from around the country. You got Duke from New York. You got Hoffman from California. These are the people that we are concerned about simple reason they have continued to not go through our neighborhood or not do what they're supposed to do in the black community.
And then you have the demand for an audit, some sunlight on the finances. Tell us about that part.
That is crucial because we want to know who is giving the NAACP money. And we want to know if the NAACP taking a back seat for that reason. We know about Wells Fargo, Bank of America. These people are giving them money. Pfizer, pharmaceutical companies. We know that these people, we want to have a list of everybody who's giving them money and what they expect to get for the money. That way we can monitor the things that they're doing. If they're not doing what they're supposed to do, we can call them out. And here's something else that was big that came up. During the election, the national office sent out word that they wanted every single unit to push Obama during the election. Now, that's illegal. You cannot push Romney. You cannot push Obama. You're a 501c3, which simply means that you can't support Romney, you can't be against him. You can't support Obama, and you cannot be against him. But what they did, they wanted every single unit to get the troops out on the ground and push Obama. So we also requested that their 501c3 be revoked as soon as possible. And now we have the evidence because we have 7 to 10 units that's willing to stand with us and say that the NAACP was pushing Obama during the election.
Okay, Reverend, the music means that's the end of our segment. Now we got a short news broadcast. Can we get you to come back in 5 minutes or so?
You sure can.
Okay, we'll see you then, and we'll be back in our second hour of World Crisis Radio after a short commentary, I guess. See you then. Welcome back to our second hour of this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. We're recording on the afternoon of Friday, January 25th. And we're happy to be getting a visit from Reverend Edward Pinkney in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Now, Reverend Pinkney, we got to talk about your trip to Los Angeles. First, you want to tell us about the public protest at the NAACP Image Awards, when and where people should go?
Absolutely. We are going to have a tremendous protest February the 1st at 665 West Jefferson at the Schreiner Auditorium. And it's going to kick off at 2 p.m., which makes it so important that people should be there because the word got out that Steve Harvey supposed to be objecting to it or something. I didn't get all the wording, but they were saying that people now know that we're going to be there. And it's important that you come. And that's at the Schreiner Auditorium, 665 West Jefferson. We'll start at 2 p.m., and we need people to come. It's crucial that you be there. And if you need to get in touch with me, you can call me on my cell phone at 269-369-8257. That's 269-369-8257. Call me, because we want people to come. We're expecting hundreds and hundreds of people to show up. Because, matter of fact, people are coming from all over the country to be there.
Reverend,
and I know myself.
Go ahead.
Repeat
your email address, too.
Okay, my email is Banco, BANCO, 9342 at sbcglobal.net. That's Banco, BANCO, 9342 at sbcglobal.net.
Now, Reverend, you also have a public event, I think, the following day?
Yes, I do. And it's going to be at the Macedo at 3655 South Grant. And it's going to start at 5 p.m. And I will be speaking. I will be the keynote speaker. And we're also expecting a tremendous turnout for that. So it should be a glorious day. And let me repeat that. That's at the Macedo. His address is 55 South Grand, Los Angeles, California. And it starts at 5 p.m. The doors will open at 5 p.m. So we're hoping that people will get there, come in, and show out, because we got a message that we're trying to get all across the country, not just about the NAACP, but everything. We want to express our opinion about what's going on, and I will be the keynote speaker.
Great. And I'm sure this is going to be very exciting. I urge everybody to take part in this and also to support you in everything that you do, right, with every means at the people's disposal. Now, we just have you for a couple of minutes now. Can we get an update about what's happening in Michigan, right? The union-busting activities, the right to work manager law, and everything to do with that.
Okay, let me give you quick. The right to work law. We have decided that we are going to support the union, even though they did not support us. And it was a fight, believe me, it was. But we have decided that we are going to go at them like they never had it before. Governor Snyder and his group, we're going to start a writing campaign. That's where we're going to go there. But also, here's the most important thing that happened here in the city of Benton Harbor. The new law goes into effect March 1st. And then we are going to get a new emergency manager February the 1st. So the day of the big march on the NAACP here in the city of Benton Harbor, they're going to be receiving a new emergency manager. And those who don't know what an emergency manager is, it's a dictator. It's someone who has absolute power over the city of Benton Harbor.
And as you told us last time, Reverend, that the people voted it down, but they brought it back in a slightly altered text, and now they've got it again, right?
Absolutely. We went out and got 226,000 signatures, put it on the ballot. The people voted it down. They went back in and rewrote it to be worse than it is today. Mm. So March the 1st, we will have a brand new dictator. Oh, I know people are saying you do not have a dictator in the city of Benton Harbor, but let me tell you, we have a dictator who has absolute power.
Yeah, those who don't see it's a dictator should try living under it when the dictator comes after you and tries to strip you of your property and your economic rights.
Absolutely. Here's something that the last one did. He raised the property tax on everybody. He wanted 15 mil, but he got 10 mil, which is about an additional $495 per each resident in the city of Benton Harbor. So he do have absolute power. He went out and had the property tax raised up. So those of you who think it can't happen to your community, believe me, it can. Right now, Detroit is about to get an emergency manager. All because they didn't really believe that it was going to happen. We warned them.
Amazing.
Yes.
So the way I understand that, Reverend, is that Snyder has created a committee or something to study the finances of Detroit, and if he doesn't like it, or if he decides he wants a little dictator, he'll send in a little dictator in the next couple of weeks. Yeah,
it's over for Detroit. Right now, they already terminated the attorney. She's gone. Everything that's working there, the same thing happened here in the city of Benton Harbor before we got the emergency manager, is happening now in Detroit. Same steps, but only the city council, they have 6 votes. They will no longer be paid once you bring the emergency manager in.
So again, the mayor is basically out, and the city council is out, and the little dictator comes in and runs the show.
That's right. Only thing the mayor do is keep a title.
Boy.
And he don't even get paid anymore.
Doesn't sound like the American way. I hope everybody, especially our listeners in Europe and elsewhere, call world attention to this. This is scandal of world proportions. It is something that the State Department needs to hear. Protests. We need to have European foreign ministries demanding explanations from the United States about this violation of democracy and human rights.
Absolutely. And we need it done immediately, because what they think they're doing the right thing for themselves, but they're not doing the right thing for the people. The people are really up in arms, and we had also warned Detroit in reference to the procedure, how they do it. They take steps, but they thought it was just Benton Harbor who they wanted. They wanted all this water around our lake. Here's something, too. Whirlpool attempted to buy Lake Michigan under the emergency manager. That's something that
lake.
People, you can't buy Lake Michigan. But Whirlpool Corporation thought that they could buy a portion of the lake. Man, I tell you, this place is, I would say this year is going to be quite a year for everybody.
And now, when is Snyder up for re-election?
2 years. 2 years.
So November of 2014.
That is correct. 2014 will be his day, November. And right now, I don't think he got a chance in the world of winning.
Well, again, I hope you'll rely on your own forces, because once that Democratic Party gets its nose in there, they can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, as they did in Wisconsin.
Absolutely. But we're sending a message also to the Democratic Party. We had enough of them also.
Okay, great. That's the spirit, Reverend. We wish you every success on your trip to Los Angeles. We'll try to make sure that important people know that you're coming, and good luck in every way, and we'll come back and give us a report when you're done.
I sure will. That's a promise.
Thank you very much. Reverend Pinckney in Benton Harbor, Michigan. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. Support Reverend Pinckney in every way you possibly can, and get that Benton Harbor and Michigan story out. The world media have to know about this. This is an unbelievable scandal, and this is fascism on the march. People say, "Oh, government is bad. Government kills people." Well, the way they do it is precisely this: through union busting and the destruction of living standards and looting people economically. And somehow our wonderful gun fetishists don't seem to be anywhere promoting these kinds of causes, right? We're told that the Second Amendment is the basis of all other rights, but I don't see the people that are most vociferous about the Second Amendment. They don't seem to be interested in anybody's economic rights. They don't seem to be interested in the right to organize and have a union and have a living wage. And they seem to say you don't have a right to health care. So it's time for political organizing in the way that Reverend Pinckney has been talking about it. Just a few more notes on Obama's tissue of platitudes here. On the literary level, this speech was hackneyed, full of cliches, empty formulas. Here, a sample. We made ourselves anew and vowed to move forward together. We are the ones we have been waiting for? I don't know. The word jobs appears, I believe, once or twice. There's nothing about jobs. He's compared this. We're told that Lincoln's second inaugural is a touchstone, and it is, and I'm certainly all for it. I'm for Lincoln all the time. But in the case of Franklin D. Roosevelt's second inaugural, I see one-third of a nation ill-clad, ill-housed, ill-nourished. That's what we need, and that's the reality. We're back to practically the same thing. So go with the Roosevelt formula, I would say. Notice you didn't hear anything about that, because compared to that, Obama, of course, looks sick. So what does he go with? Obama has identified the Republican wedge issues, right? The wedge issues invented by Lee Atwater and perfected by Karl Rove. He wants to work them in reverse. The Republicans are squawking. It's actually funny. The Republicans have been merrily using the wedge issues to attack and divide the FDR National Coalition for the last 40 years. And now Obama has thrown the wedge issues into reverse because the demographic changes mean that the Republicans with the wedge issues become the minority. But these are still wedge issues. We don't want wedge issues. We want issues that unite the 98% against the 1 to 2% of parasitical oligarchs, mainly in the financial community, who control the government. And that's the way it works. So that's our strategy. The revival of the FDR National Coalition, brought up to date for the demographic changes that we have, right? The coming of Hispanics, the coming of Asian Americans, the youth generation, the increasing political activity of women, and all the rest of this, and indeed a much broader geographic selection. All of this needs to be brought up to date, but not by wedge issues, by the bedrock economic issues, the economic rights of the New Deal, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, get 75 to 80% support. That's what we want to stress. Issues, those are actually the issues that are uniters and not dividers. Guns, God, gays, abortion. Those are the traditional ones. Well, on the guns, we've had this done to death. Obama says he wants gay marriage. I'm all for gay marriage. This is, however, a state issue. This is going to go through state by state. And here in Maryland, we were happy to vote. Gay marriage has passed in Maryland. I urge everybody else, get gay marriage passed every state, get it done, and then move on to the life and death economic issues where this crisis is actually going to be decided. You can see the Republicans are attacking on the front of abortion, and Obama comes out and says, we will respond to the threat of climate change. Well, there is climate change. There's no doubt about climate change. It's always changing. It's not even clear exactly what way, although it seems some things seem to be getting warmer. Although the past couple of weeks here, and now there's snow falling here in Washington, D.C. But what Obama means by that, and he said it, is we will make the hard choices for we will make the hard choices to reduce the cost of health care and the size of our deficit. Now, when he says reduce the cost of health care, he doesn't mean find cures. He means gouging the recipients as well as gouging the providers. But eventually, he's already cut $700 billion out of Medicare, and he's offering the Republicans another $400 billion. That makes $1.1 trillion. Don't tell me you can take that out of Medicare and nobody dies. Plenty will die. This is unacceptable. That's not the liberal progressive agenda. That's a mockery of it. And, of course, what he means by address climate change is he means cap and trade, Waxman Markey. He means that the people whose Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security is going to be gouged and looted and chiseled will be doing so that he can have green boondoggles. He can have Solyndra. He can pour more billions into these dead-end technologies of windmills and solar cells, because that's what he wants. And there's no modern energy production anywhere in here. He could easily have said, we have 100 nuclear reactors. They're all pre-Carter. We've got to rebuild all of them at the most modern and the safest level. That would be a responsible and safe approach. But, of course, he can't do that because he operates under ultra-left or ultra-progressive cover. And you can see the rest of it. So it's also nice that he's for a solution to immigration. That's a very important one. My approach, as you know, 1 year to regularize everybody. Everybody becomes a citizen within 1 year. No penalties, no second-class citizenship, no guest worker, none of that. Everybody first-class citizen, and then get on with economic development. We want to develop our labor force and avoid a demographic crisis. So that's basically Obama. Now, in the middle of this, let's look at a couple of appointments. Jack Lew, otherwise known as Jack Lude. This is the supposed new Secretary of the Treasury. I say stop him. Stop Jack Lew. We don't want him as the Secretary of the Treasury. He is a city banker. He works for Citibank. Isn't it interesting? Under George W. Bush, Goldman Sachs was on the inside track, but under Obama, it's Citibank on the inside track. as in the case of Citi banker Jack Lew. This is the influence of Robert Rubin, of both Goldman Sachs and Citibank, but mainly Citibank. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So we're not happy with Obama's second inaugural. We want Roosevelt's second inaugural. And we like the spirit of Lincoln's second inaugural. We want to stop Jack Lew. Time to stop Jack Lew from becoming Treasury Secretary. He is a Citi banker. He is a bailout artist. Citibank got more money out of the bailout than anybody. $476 billion went to Citibank. And at that time, Jack Lew, who had been in government with Clinton and others, he joined Citibank, and he got $940,000 as a bonus right before Citibank got on the trail to $476 billion. 476, the same as the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD. But it's $476 billion to Citibank. What did Jack Lew do at Citibank? He is a civ lord, the return of the civs. The structured investment vehicles, that was the specialty of Jack Lew. He was the big SIV man, structured investment vehicles. These, of course, are kinds of derivatives, along with collateralized debt obligations and structured credit default swaps. The structured investment vehicle is one of the most toxic varieties. This was his stock in trade. We don't want him. Now, this guy, Lew, is supposed to be the chair of the Systemic Risk Council that will oversee the execution of the Volcker Rule. The Volcker Rule, of course, a weak, watered-down, and really feckless version of Glass-Steagall, but it's something. Lew's job, of course, will be to make sure that it turns out to be nothing. His career promoted by Bob Rubin of Goldman Sachs and Citibank, who dominated the Clinton administration. Clinton's second term, an absolute disaster. Lew was the key man for the complete abolition of Glass-Steagall and the introduction of interstate banking, too, in 1999. This was a favor to Sandy Weil of Citibank, who wanted to merge with Travelers. And then in 2000, Lew went on to superintend the abolition of the Commodities Exchange Act of 1936. And this meant that Lew had made all derivatives legal. He deregulated all derivatives. Lew is also one of the proteges of Pandit the Bandit. We've talked about him. And this was when Old Lane Securities, a hedge fund, came in and became the in-house Citibank hedge fund. So you get the idea. No to Lew. Other bad appointments. Mary Jo White, U.S. attorney in New York City. She's the one who prosecuted the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. Very bad. And you remember here we had this guy, Saleh, who was the informer, and he said to the FBI, make sure that you don't put real explosives in the truck. And then the FBI insisted on putting real explosives in the truck. You can read all about that in 9/11 Synthetic Terror Made in USA. I have a complete story of the fraud. It's actually quite detailed, of the fraud of the original World Trade Center bombing. This Mary Jo White is necessarily a part of that cover-up. And then we've got this other guy, McDonough. McDonough replaces Lew as the White House Chief of Staff. This is a right-wing Democrat. And what do we find again? Citibank. McDonough comes from the office of Tom Daschle. Tom Daschle, the senator from Citibank. Why? Because Citibank, and you could see this from the interstate in the days of yore, Citibank has its main check facility in South Dakota. They are one of the biggest companies in South Dakota. Tom Daschle, right-wing Democrat, sellout Democrat, feckless leader of the Democratic majority for some years. He was the senator from Citibank. So McDonough coming from the office of Daschle is yet another Citibank pedigree. So it looks like Citibank is ahead of Goldman Sachs. My God, Pandit the Bandit beats Blankfein, at least for the moment. And of course, now we're under the successor of Blankfein. So this is a terrible situation. Now let's just push ahead. The Republicans, you just to round out this question, the dismantling and demolition of the Republican Party remains a question of world interest. Now, we have articles here in the Washington Post and elsewhere that show that the reactionary Republicans are responding to their defeat and indeed their demographic doom by attempting to skew the Electoral College. They're attempting a cold coup in the Electoral College. They want to take these states, which have reactionary Republican governors and reactionary Republican state legislatures, and they want to change the method of assigning the electoral votes so that it will occur according to the congressional district. This is a transparent subterfuge to try to help the reactionary Republican candidate, right? It magnifies the strength of rural voters, right? Virginia goes from being a red state to a purple state to now, in the last two elections, a blue state. But now the Republicans are trying to roll that back. They want to do it by congressional districts, and this would mean that the Republicans, based on rural Virginia, would tend to dominate the state. It's a coup, and it's being done in Pennsylvania, in Virginia, other states where, again, you have reactionary Republican governors and legislatures, but Obama won the popular vote. Now, in Virginia, this took a very, very interesting turn. On Inauguration Day, the reactionary Republicans actually pulled a coup. They waited until the feckless Democrats went to, one of them at least, went to Washington to celebrate Obama, and the Republicans took advantage of that to ram through the state Senate a redistricting bill, which had obviously been carefully prepared. It was detailed. It was based on granular demographic studies. Must have taken weeks or months to get this ready. But the Democrats, useless as always and feckless, didn't know about it. And this guy, he went to the inauguration, and surprise, surprise, the Republicans called an emergency session and rammed it through. And now there's a question, will it get through the House of Delegates? And then we've got the Virginia governor, Bob McDonnell. This is transvaginal Bob, who wants to have a transportation bill, and the Virginia government is in chaos. This means that the Republicans are unacceptable as a party of government. They cannot govern. Their only stock in trade is chaos, blackmail, extortion, coups, and so forth. This is a terrible recipe for the United States, right? This is fun poppin'. It's government by the threat of coup d'etat. That's fun poppin'. That's from, again, in the German example, from the summer of 1932 until December of 1932, when that government fell. I would say it's very likely that ALEC, right, the American Legislative Exchange Council, the Koch money, is behind this general push, which is also being announced at the Republican National Committee winter meeting with Reince Priebus, who is the CAC who still leads this thing. Let's switch into foreign policy here at the end with the time that we have remaining. We want to talk about Algeria and we want to talk about Syria, and we'll do that in our last segment, back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. Now remember, you can't follow what's going on around you if you don't have Just Too Weird, Bishop Romney and the Mormon Takeover of America with Polygamy, Theocracy, and Subversion. We just had General Allen has been rehabilitated. General Allen is supposed to go on to become the NATO commander. Europeans, don't let him do it. Lyman Lemnitzer, Operation Northwoods, a golpista, a coup artist, a putschist from the United States, was sent over to become the NATO commander. He's the one who created Gladio and all those arms deposits. What will Allen do if he's now rehabilitated by the FBI, but he still has to have the agrément of the various European countries? So don't give it to him. Tell him no. Get somebody less tainted by these scandals. Now, Algeria. Hats off to Algeria. Algeria's line is exemplary. Algeria has understood from the terrible experience of the 1990s when they had the GIA, the Groupe Islamique Armée, who were murderous terrorists, coming in and just exterminating entire villages without regard even to politics of individuals. The Algerians have understood the Latin principle, principiis obsta, cut it, nip it in the bud. When you have terrorism, and this includes Nazi street gangs, you've got to crush them immediately so they can't become popular and so that this evil does not acquire momentum. The Algerians have learned that, and they've done it. The In Amenas case, they were so slandered and maligned. Oh, they didn't consult the great U.S. Yeah, I wouldn't consult the great U.S. The great U.S. is part of the powers that maneuver and control these terrorists. They've been used against Libya. They're used against Syria, against Yemen, and now against Algeria, right? Against Assad, against Gaddafi, now against Bouteflika. So don't tell them. That's smart. And you certainly don't want to let the U.S. come onto your territory. That's terrible. Then you become a puppet of U.S. AFRICOM. So no. What the Algerians did was to ignore the pressure to compromise themselves in negotiations with these killers, and they simply went in and wiped them out. They liquidated the terrorists. They have killed more terrorists than the great U.S. In quite a while in this part of the world, and these are actual terrorists. Now, even more fascinating, we're told from the New York Times of a couple of days ago, see my Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley, for the actual link, that there were a couple of Egyptian killers who have survived. They've been captured, and they tell the story that some of the terrorists involved at In Amenas were part of the death squad that killed Ambassador Stevens and the other 3 Americans in Benghazi, Libya, on the September 11th. So, in effect, while the U.S. and Hillary Clinton were blabbing and palavering and squabbling, the Algerians have exacted revenge for the Benghazi killings by liquidating some of the killers. This is effective policy. So Bouteflika, I think, a survivor of many decades, he's understood the lessons of Gaddafi and Assad and Mubarak and Saleh in Yemen and others, and he acted accordingly. So this was effective. Now, Hillary Clinton is not qualified to be president. Hillary Clinton, indeed, should have been fired. When you say, I take responsibility, ministerial responsibility means if a disaster occurs in the area of your executive department on your watch, you resign. It would have been, of course, in order for Rumsfeld and Mueller and Ashcroft and many other officials of the Bush administration to resign in the wake of 9/11 because they had egg on their face at the very least. This is, even before you get into the whole apparatus of how this was carried out, just what anybody can see. Otherwise, the minister is claiming more power. That was Ashcroft's position. He said, give me more power. The more I fail, the more power you have to give me. No. If you fail, out you go. Hillary Clinton failed. And then she says, what difference does it make? Well, here's the difference it makes, Hillary. Your crime is that you have allied yourself with Al-Qaeda and similar death squads, terrorist groups, against Assad, Gaddafi, Bouteflika, and Saleh. That's your crime. And that is the impeachment potential of the second term of Obama. It's right there. The question, who lost Egypt, who lost Libya, to the extent, and who lost some of these other places. This goes to Obama and to Hillary, and she thinks she's qualified to be president. She is absolutely not. The new refinement we have in Washington now is you can take responsibility without accepting the blame. In other words, I'm responsible in a general sort of abstract way, but no negative consequences for me, to be sure. Now we have the blasé oligarch, the Boston Brahmin, the skull and bones representative, John Kerry. Nobody in these hearings seemed to have anything to say about skull and bones. Well, the last time we had a skull and bones foreign policy, we had George H.W. Bush, who launched this series of lunatic adventures in the Middle East with the first Gulf War, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and then enduring freedom in 2003, the war with Iraq and all the rest of it, and the Afghan war. So the skull and bones foreign policy doesn't seem to work too well. And here we've got a skull and bones representative bidding to take over the State Department. Now, strangely enough, Little Rand Paul, who is preening himself for the presidency on the basis of no qualifications whatsoever and no achievements and no record, nevertheless has had some interesting questions, right? He did say the obvious thing that Hillary deserved to be fired. I wonder whether Little Rand, much as I dislike him, and much as I am committed that he should never be president, Little Rand seems to be reading my stuff, because he asked Hillary, was Ambassador Stevens there to smuggle arms from Libya to Turkey? And somebody said, Turkey? What's Turkey? There was a funny moment in the room. Yeah, obviously, because that's how you get it to Syria for the overthrow of Assad. So I must say, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So I thank Little Rand for this wonderful honor that he gives me by copying my material, because I don't think anybody else has asked that. And somebody was asking, where does he get this? Does he get it off the internet? Yeah, he does, from me, I think, because I don't see anybody asking those questions. And now, Syria. A couple of weeks ago, I pointed out that the fact that the imperialists had opened up the new front in Mali and Algeria meant that their forces would be divided and diverted, and that the pressure on Assad in Syria would be relaxed. And you heard that here, and now you can read it here. As-Safir, Sami Khleib in As-Safir of Lebanon, says it's almost 2 years into the Syrian crisis, but it looks like Assad is regaining the upper hand. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says the departure of Assad is impossible. Ali Akbar Velayati, the international affairs advisor to the Ayatollah in Iran, says Assad is a red line. The Russians say they are not taking their large community out of Syria, just 100 people who want to fly back in airplanes that are not full. Space A, in other words, space available on the way back. And we have a couple of other things. The U.S. is freaking out, finally, about the al-Nusra al-Qaeda terrorist group. Robert Ford is very unhappy with the situation. That's too bad. The French, of course, the French will not be able to do anything in Syria because the French are completely overextended in Mali. You can just take them out of it. The King of Jordan says that Assad will not fall. The U.S. has backed off to some extent. Turkey sees what a terrible mistake they've made in this. Maybe Davutoglu will be fired. That would be good. If Erdogan wants to save himself, fire Davutoglu. Too bad. And there have even been secret contacts between Syria and Saudi Arabia. We'll see you next week on World Crisis Radio.